Hi guys, Brian here. Today we're going to talk about bag breathing. Bag breathing, big common tool used in the metabolic world. What we're going to talk about is why you'd want to use it, when you'd want to use it, and what it actually means when you're seeing how you're using it. Okay, so first off, bag breathing, as the name implies, is exactly what it sounds like. You're breathing into a bag. And by breathing into a bag, your exhaled air, which will be rich in CO2, gets inhaled back in. Okay, so why would we want to do that? So if I'm exhaling, I'm going to increase the CO2 level in the bag. As I'm inhaling, I'm now bringing in the air that I just breathed out, which will be a lot more CO2. So that in every breath I take and exhale, inhale, exhale, I'm constantly increasing the CO2 level in my inhaled breath. Sounds pretty weird, right? Here's why that matters. CO2 is a vasodilator. What that means is it takes your blood vessels and it opens them up. So now you have more blood flow getting to tissue. Not only that, CO2 helps you to get oxygen off of the red blood cell, off of the hemoglobin, and into the tissue that needs it. So if you have tissue, and that tissue is making energy, cellular respiration, a byproduct of that cellular respiration is carbon dioxide. As carbon dioxide is being created, as the tissue is being healthy, that CO2 then gets onto the red blood cell and exchanges the oxygen that's on that red blood cell with that CO2. That's called the Bohr effect. Okay, B-O-H-R. What the Bohr effect is that you have the red blood cell carrying the oxygen, you have the tissue that's making CO2. The pressure difference between the two causes the CO2 that's sitting in that tissue and the oxygen on that red blood cell to exchange places. Then the red blood cell goes out to the lungs, carries away that CO2, and the oxygen that's now in that tissue gets used to make more energy. So the more CO2 we have, the better our tissue functions, the better it makes energy. That's a big premise of our pro-metabolic approach. Everything we're doing comes back to making better energy in the cell. So why that matters? Think of it like this. Under stress, I'm going to use fat for energy. I'm going to liberate my stored fat cells because I'm starved or because I'm no longer available to have blood sugar. Blood sugar is no longer available, or I have some sort of demand for resources that I can't meet with my circulating fuel supply, so then I have to tap into my reserves and break down my own tissue to survive. That's a stress metabolism, and fat is the primary energy source in that stress state. So if I'm creating energy from fat, I'm actually not making a lot of CO2, I'm actually making oxygen. So oxygen and oxygen don't really give us the same effect. You can use oxygen locally, but it's not the same benefit as actually creating CO2. If I had a carbohydrate-based metabolism, this would be my stress-free metabolism. This would be where I have an abundance of resources and I'm no longer in a quest for food. Everything is stress-free, I'm relaxed, got my hands up, I'm chilling on the beach. We want that level of health and cellular function as often as possible. And when things are working well and you're breaking down carbohydrates for energy, you will create carbon dioxide and water. Hence the name carbohydrate, carbon dioxide and water. So if I'm making carbon dioxide by utilizing glucose well, I'm going to create the Bohr effect. I'm going to get oxygen off the red blood cell into the tissue and everything works better. Okay, so all that biochemistry aside, let's talk about what you're actually going to do. So here's what you're going to do. Here's how you can actually increase your CO2 very, very quickly. If you're ever in a stress situation, you're ever anxious or have anxiety, you've probably seen people breathe into a paper bag back and forth, and they calm down. Because they're increasing their CO2, they're increasing oxygenation of tissue, you're increasing cellular respiration. All of that is to say they're making their body have more energy and feel safer. That's it. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to get a bag. In this case, I have a plastic food grade bag. You can use a Ziploc bag. You can use a paper bag. Probably don't want to use a grocery bag. A little bit big, a little bit weird plastic feeling. This is a good quality plastic, I find. If you're going to go the plastic route, paper bags work well too. So I'm going to make a little hole to start. Then I'm going to fill it up. I fill it up because it's easier to handle the bag, for one, and for two, I don't want to get to the point of running out of room in the bag. If I run out of room with my inhales and my exhales, the bag starts to suck onto your face, and it's just an uncomfortable feeling, and you may quit bag breathing too early because of how the bag is feeling on your face, rather than actually getting to the point of air hunger, which is that generalized feeling of, I really have to take a breath of air right now. That's our target. So here's what we're going to do. We got the bag full. I'm going to make a seal around my mouth and around my nose. Okay? So with the seal around my mouth and nose, I'm now going to inhale and exhale nasally in and out of into the bag. And you want to go slow. You don't necessarily want to hyperventilate. You want to just breathe at a normal pace. And you'll just do that. And you'll do that until you get to the point of, okay, I got to take that away and breathe a real breath of air now. That's the point of air hunger. It's a very distinct feeling. It's a very interesting feeling. For some people, it's a little scary the first few times you do it. You'll be okay. All you have to do is take the bag away. You'll be fine. So, why would you ever want to do that? If you're ever under stress, it's a great way to reoxygenate tissue. Because again, you're building up your CO2 by recycling the exhaled air and then therefore increasing the amount of CO2 you're breathing in on every breath. That then allows your cells to make more energy. You're getting more oxygen into the cell. They're going to work harder. They're going to work better. Your body will feel safer when it has more energy. The other thing you can do with bag breathing is you can increase your endurance. Okay, so let's think about this. As I'm moving through the world, as I'm exercising, as I'm running, as I'm lifting weights in the gym, part of that fatigue equation, that your brain says, wait a minute, you're doing stuff and I don't know if we can keep going at this rate, part of that equation, part of that conversation your brain is having on a subconscious level is going to be based around your sensitivity to changes in CO2. So if you're exercising, the muscle is making energy, CO2 levels will build up, it will get into the bloodstream. There are areas of your brain dedicated to determining and sensing CO2 changes. And when they sense CO2 changes, they change your breathing rate, they change your kidney function, they change your capacity for movement so that you stop making CO2 at a rate that it can't change back. It can't buffer that. It can't adjust your breathing fast enough. It can't recover fast enough for the level of CO2 that you're creating. So part of your fatigue and exercise is actually your capacity to handle CO2. Breathing into a bag gives you a bolus of CO2 that you're exposed to. So by breathing into a bag often, you can actually increase your sensitivity to, or I should say decrease your sensitivity to CO2. Your system gets better at sensing, oh, CO2 is here, but it's a big amount. We've been here before. We've done this before. We don't have to feel afraid about this. We don't have to slow you down. We don't have to create fatigue. We don't have to do anything different. So bag breathing can actually be used as a performance enhancing tool. Okay? So you can use it for stress relief. You can use it to enhance performance. There may be a time where you're bag breathing and you can go and 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 you can take all the breaths all day long and it doesn't get you to that point of air hunger. That's a problem. It's one thing to say I'm really good at handling CO2. It's another thing to say I'm not exhaling a lot of it. If you're not exhaling a lot of CO2, you're actually probably using a fat-based metabolism. This is called the respiratory quotient. So what it is that you can measure somebody's breath. They have very technical devices that go on your face and you're exhaling and inhaling and they're looking at the percentage of gas that is oxygen or CO2 or anything else that you're exhaling. And then based on those percentages, they can determine, is this person utilizing fat for energy or is this person utilizing carbohydrate for energy? If you're utilizing carbohydrates for energy, your CO2 levels will be higher. That's what's going to kick you into that feeling of, okay, I am getting an increase in CO2, I am now getting to the point of air hunger, I am now going to need to take this bag away. If you're utilizing CO2 for energy, or carbohydrates for energy, you'll exhale more CO2. If you're utilizing fat for energy, you'll exhale more oxygen. So your respiratory quotient will actually not be as indicative of a carbohydrate-based metabolism. So your exhaled air will be lower in CO2, which means you can take more breaths before you raise your CO2 levels to the point where you actually have to do something different with your breathing. And if you're under stress, your preferred source of energy is fat. If you have a problem with carbohydrate metabolism, you have diabetes, your preferred energy source will be fat. Okay? So think about that. Diabetes, you're not using carbohydrates well. So then you're not going to be making energy from carbohydrates, so you're not going to be exhaling as much CO2. So from that standpoint, you're going to be able to bag breathe longer and longer and longer and longer. But it doesn't necessarily denote health. We don't want to be in that situation where I can go longer and longer and longer because I'm using fat for energy. If anything, I want you to be able to go longer and longer and longer because you're healthy and you're desensitized to CO2. But if you have a fat-based metabolism, bag breathing can be something that you can go on for hours with. And that's not a good sign. So you want to look at it from that perspective. It may be something about your sensitivity. It may also be the amount of oxygen to CO2 ratio that you're actually exhaling. So give bag breathing a shot. Give it a shot when you're stressed. Give it a shot when you're training. Give it a shot when you're just trying to explore the world and see if it's something that helps you out. Something that I notice quite a bit with bag breathing, it's a great way to warm up my hands and feet. If I'm ever in a stress state, I have cold hands and feet, bag breathing will actually knock me out of that stress state very, very quickly. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Stick around, there is plenty more to come. See you soon.